begin in just a moment. Hello everyone, and welcome to the VISTA Sponsor Orientation. This session is a first glimpse of the information and resources needed to carry out your new role as VISTA Project Director. We are very happy to have with us today a few of our staff, and you will hear from two CNCF staff members throughout the presentation. My name is Eric Powell, and I am an AmeriCorps VISTA Training Specialist at the Corporation for National and Community Service located in Washington, D.C. I served as a VISTA member in 2006 and a VISTA leader in 2008, and I'm very, very happy to be here presenting with you on this VISTA Sponsor Orientation.
Hi, everyone. I'm Zanguetta Gray, and I'm the Mississippi State Program Director with the Office of Field Liaison at the Corporation for National and Community Service. I'm located in Jackson, Mississippi. In our office, we manage AmeriCorps VISTA as well as Senior Corps programs throughout the state of Mississippi. Throughout the presentation, we may be joined by CNCS State Office and VISTA colleagues assisting us with the chat panel and working together to provide you essential information and answer your questions.
Now that you know a little bit about us, let's learn a little bit about who is with us on today's webinar. This may also help you make connections with people geographically near you or who are working at similar organizations. Please take a moment to answer your questions in the chat panel. What is the name of your organization? Where are you located? And what is your favorite winter food? As you type, Zanguetta and I will go ahead and answer those questions as well. So you already know that Zanguetta and I both work for the Corporation for National and Community Service. I'm in D.C., she's in Mississippi. And I will say that my favorite winter food is probably peach cobbler, good homemade peach cobbler. Zanguetta, what about you? What's your favorite winter food?
My favorite winter food is chili.
Ooh, that sounds good right about now.
Mm-hmm.
And we see quite a few comments coming in the chat. This is great. A lot of interesting but wonderful winter foods. It's making me hungry right now, but we won't belabor the point. We'll continue, but keep those comments coming so that you can also get a sense of where each person is located. So thank you again for that short activity. I'm now going to turn it over to Zanguetta for a few more introductory comments.
Thanks, Eric. While this information is most relevant for VISTA project directors, we have designed this session so that everyone involved in the management and oversight of VISTA projects will gain valuable knowledge from reviewing this content. We recommend that VISTA project directors, project and site supervisors, and authorized representatives all review this content so that your organization will be well prepared to manage a VISTA program. In our development, we are assuming that you are relatively new or even brand new to VISTA. In developing today's presentation, we are assuming that participants have looked at a number of materials ahead of time. These include VISTA 101 and 201, and these materials are stored on the VISTA campus. Just to get a quick idea in the chat panel, type yes if you've completed them, no if you have not gotten to them yet, or in progress if you've started but did not finish. As you type your responses, we create these resources to be best practices for you being a VISTA sponsor and to give you access to information that you may need while in your role.
So Zanguetta, what comments are we seeing in the chat? Does it look like most people have completed them?
We are seeing quite a few in progress and not yet.
Okay. That's good. It means that you started it and maybe got a little bit busy, but you're working on it, which is great. We certainly encourage that you finish them just because there's a lot of really good resources in them. But I'll turn it back over to you, to Zanguetta.
Thank you. If you have not completed them yet, it is in your best interest to complete them as soon as possible to best situate you for a success as a VISTA sponsor. Let's jump into our presentation. Eric, What are we going to cover today?
Great question. The best answer is probably to start with our agenda for today's orientation. This session will focus on key pieces that will give you the initial information that you need to ensure your success as a VISTA project. Today we will cover where to start, which includes resources and people that can help you get your bearings in the world of AmeriCorps. The big picture, an overview of CNCS, including the structure of national service, CNCS programs, our chain of communication, and the core principles of VISTA. Core responsibilities. Your responsibilities relating to VISTA member support and project management, as well as important governing documents for our work together. Keys to success. Tips, training tools, and resources that are available, and a sense of what success looks like for VISTA projects. Next steps. These are important because we show you where to go next on your learning path. Finally, we'll wrap up, closing out our session today, and we'll end with a question and answer session at the end. In the handout panel of today's webinar, as we mentioned, you can download a one-page acronym list. The list has a few obvious acronyms, for example, VISTA, V-I-S-T-A, and then a few acronyms that only the seasoned VISTA project sponsors will know. Together, this list will be a very helpful resource as you get to know the CNCS structure, our staff, and the VISTA project requirements. We recommend you keep this document as a reference and certainly write out the answers to the acronyms, as well as adding other acronyms and notes to it, since you will likely see and hear many of these acronyms used throughout the length of your VISTA project.
If you are a new VISTA sponsor, it can be overwhelming to figure out what you need to know, where to find information, and who to reach out to for help. Here are a few key resources for you. We will refer to these throughout the presentation today. And as a result of our presentation, we want to be sure that everyone on today's webinar will learn a core set of terms for VISTA project management. This graphic shows where to find information on a variety of topics. The resources on this screen will connect you to websites and resources such as the CNCS website, which will connect you to various things including publications. You should create a VISTA Campus account if you've not done so already, and review the sponsor handbook and check out other VISTA sponsor and supervisor information available. eGrants, for instance, contains information about your application, VISTA assignment descriptions, reporting, and other topics. These resources will connect you to people and regulations as you seek and support guidance. The National Service Hotline is who you contact with eGrants issues, questions about VISTA member pay and relocation benefits, and cost share billing. You would contact your CNCS state office for information about project compliance, issues with VISTA members, changing and approving VADs, and anything else. It is important for you to know what resources are available to you and where they are, so that you can also obtain the support you need of your VISTA project. These links and more are available in your VISTA Sponsor Resource Guide. As a reminder, you can find a link to the Sponsor Resource Guide in the handout panel. Along with getting a handle on the written materials that support you and your VISTA project, I want to underscore the importance of establishing communication expectations with your staff, VISTA members, sub-site staff, and CNCS. One way to avoid unforeseen issues and complications during the VISTA year is to establish a solid communication chain. In this task, your top resource will be your CNCS state office. The CNCS state office is able to provide a lot of support and also direct you to key tools and resources. Technical assistance from the CNCS state office can take many forms. For example, they can provide technical support for things like member recruitment, training, reporting, and other things you're responsible for, and they can offer support for your member management and challenges. For VISTA members and supervisors with questions or concerns, you as the VISTA sponsor are the first-line resource. For questions relating to benefits, you can direct your VISTA member to the VISTA Member Support Unit, the VISTA Member Handbook, and other resources on the VISTA campus. Depending on how your project is structured, it might be the case that you are the main point of contact for members and supervisors. If it's a question that you're not able to address, then you would contact your CNCS state office. The CNCS state office has access to other departments and units at CNCS in the event that they need additional input. In addition to the resources included in the VISTA Sponsor Resource Guide, we want to highlight some key contacts and information that we want to be sure you know about. On the top of your list is the CNCS State Office. They are there to help you ensure that you have the tools, resources, and knowledge that you need to lead a successful VISTA project. The VISTA Sponsor and Outreach page referenced here should be one of the first places you go because it contains information about recruitment, marketing, fact sheets, and much more. Much of the material available on this page is print ready, so be sure to check it out. The VISTA campus is filled with helpful tools and resources. You can find the member handbook and sponsor handbook there, as well as a variety of courses to help you through the life of your project. There is also a supervisor forum where you can have a dialogue with other supervisors from around the country. Many of the resources highlighted on the resource guide point you to the VISTA campus. Be sure you create a supervisor account on the VISTA campus, otherwise you won't be able to access everything referenced on the sponsor resource page. The National Service Hotline offers support to you as well as your members and supervisors. They can help with common e-grants questions, reset passwords, etc., but can also escalate calls to the e-grants help desk. Be sure to keep the e-grant support link handy, but remember that you can also call the National Service Hotline. The National Service Hotline will also escalate calls to the VISTA Member Support Unit or the VMSU. The VMSU can troubleshoot member issues related to the living allowance or relocation payment issues, and they can answer questions about benefits such as the Education Award. Also, check out the last site for member gear. pubs.nationalservice.gov. On this site, you can find things like posters and brochures. These resources are free and may prove very useful to you in assisting in recruiting, talking about the VISTA program, and more. Separately, and for your information, eligible VISTA members receive several free items after starting service. Approximately 2 weeks after VISTA members start service, they will receive an email with instructions on how to order specific free gear we provide them, which includes a VISTA polo shirt, t-shirt, lapel pin, tote bag, journal, and water bottle. These items are restricted to only VISTA members, and they must be ordered by the members themselves using the specific instructions they are sent. However, there are lots of other materials and resources you as a sponsor can order on this website.
During VISTA 101, you already learned, and some of you are in the process of learning about VISTA, its mission to empower communities to find solutions that eliminate poverty, and also learning how VISTA members build capacity. If you have not yet completed VISTA 1 and VISTA 101 and VISTA 201, please refer to the VISTA Sponsor Resource Guide that's located in the Handouts panel. Now we're going to take a minute to discuss a few key principles that are central to the VISTA program. The Corporation for National and Community Service improves lives, strengthens communities, and fosters civic engagement through service and volunteering. As the nation's largest grant maker in support of service and volunteering, CNCS engages Americans of all ages and backgrounds in service to their communities each year through Senior Corps, AmeriCorps, and other programs. As you probably know, CNCS was created in 1993, and it engages more than 5 million Americans annually in improving communities through service. CNCS supports service at national, state, and local levels with a variety of service opportunities. I'll turn it back over to Zengueta to dive a little bit deeper into the work that CNCS does by discussing CNCS's program areas.
Thanks, Eric. Under that broad mission of CNCS, there are two main programming areas, Senior Corps and AmeriCorps. Senior Corps was created in 1965 and includes 3 different programs to engage and serve senior adults in the U.S. Individuals who are 55 and older can join the Retired Senior Volunteer Program, Foster Grandparent Program, or the Senior Companion Program. AmeriCorps was created in 1994, and over 1 million members have contributed over 1 billion service hours across America. As you can see, there are 3 different AmeriCorps programs, AmeriCorps State and National, AmeriCorps NCCC, and AmeriCorps VISTA. CNCS state offices administer VISTA and Senior Corps programs with your support. In New Mexico, for example, the CNCS state office oversees 9 VISTA projects with about 100 VISTA members. They also oversee 50 Senior Corps programs that manage over 4,500 volunteers. This is just one of many examples of CNCS state offices and the programs involved. Next, we'll turn our attention to the history of VISTA.
Let's talk about how VISTA started. In 1964, President Lyndon B. Johnson declared a war on poverty and signed the Economic Opportunity Act. The act created Volunteers in Service to America, or VISTA, and other programs to combat poverty. VISTA is authorized under the Domestic Volunteer Service Act of 1973 as amended. The DVSA is a statute, and statutes define the legal boundaries with which the VISTA program may operate. In 1993, with President Bill Clinton's signing of the National and Community Service Trust Act, both CNCS and the AmeriCorps programs were established. The National Community Service Trust Act also merged several national service programs, including VISTA, to be a part of AmeriCorps. The 2009 Edward M. Kennedy Serve America Act reauthorized and expanded CNCS's national service programs. Your specific VISTA projects were selected because they demonstrate a substantial connection to VISTA's mission, objectives, and principles. As you know, VISTA's mission is to strengthen organizations that alleviate poverty through volunteering and the mobilization of resources. VISTA is the only AmeriCorps program focused exclusively on fighting poverty. VISTA also has 3 very specific objectives of the program: to strengthen local agencies and organizations to carry out the purpose of the program, to encourage volunteer service at the local level, and to generate the commitment of private sector resources. As you can see, VISTA's objectives directly support building capacity. Finally, these are the core principles that shape everything AmeriCorps VISTA does: anti-poverty focus, community empowerment, capacity building, and sustainable solutions. And remember, your VISTA projects were selected because they demonstrate a strong connection to VISTA's core principles. Now that you know the core mission and principles of VISTA, we will review some key terms and definitions. Remember that this information is based on VISTA's authorizing legislation, and it's important to understand how each role is identified. Project or VISTA project means a set of VISTA activities operated and overseen by a sponsor. Sponsor, project sponsor, VISTA sponsor, or VISTA project sponsor means a public agency or private nonprofit organization that receives assistance and is responsible for operating and overseeing a VISTA project. A public agency may be a federal, state, local, or tribal government. Project Director or VISTA Project Director means a staff person of the sponsor who has been assigned by the sponsor the overall responsibility for the management of the VISTA project. Project directors are responsible for executing all aspects of the project as outlined by the sponsor. The supervisor is an individual who directly supervises a VISTA member. This can be at the project level or at the site/subrecipient level. Project sponsors are responsible for ensuring all member supervisors are trained. It's very important to note that some project directors are also supervisors. CNCS State Office. CNCS has field staff working throughout the United States. There are CNCS state offices representing all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and U.S. territories. Some offices are responsible for multiple states and territories. Next, Zangorda will talk about how CNCS state office staff can help with outreach, program development, technical assistance, monitoring, and evaluation in support of your VISTA project.
By now, you should be familiar with your CNCS state office. Let's do a quick check to see who you work with. Please type the name of your CNCS program officer in the chat.
So far, the names coming in look correct. They're names that Zangorda and I both recognize, so that's a good thing. You're not typing the name of your best friend. Although hopefully your CNCS state office is you're building a good relationship with them, but this is great.
This is great. Thank you for participating in that chat. I do see the names of several of my colleagues listed in the chat, and it's totally okay if you haven't met your program officer yet. As we said at the beginning, we know a bunch of folks on today's webinar are new to our work, so you may not have had a chance to meet the corporation state office team yet. As we discussed earlier, CNCS state offices manage AmeriCorps VISTA as well as Senior Corps programs in their states. For VISTA projects, the CNCS state office helps develop, support, and facilitate VISTA projects throughout their life cycle. State offices are there to sing your praises and help you through challenging times. They are available to help with member emergencies, troubleshooting, and policy questions. They can also support you by connecting you to resources and training tools for you and your members. One important note here, the CNCS state office also plays an important role in approving candidates for VISTA service and removing members from service. As a reminder, only CNCS can approve members for service. The CNCS state office carefully reviews all applicants that you recommend for VISTA service to ensure they are a good fit for the program. Likewise, CNCS alone has the authority to remove a member from service. This is one of the reasons why it's critically important for you to update your CNCS state office early and often when it comes to member issues. We'll talk more about the importance of documenting member performance and actions later. Your VISTA members are critical and necessary for the success of your VISTA program. As you know, VISTA service is a 12-month full-time, which is 35 to 45 hours per week commitment, where VISTAs provide indirect service to build capacity and sustainability with programs that work to alleviate poverty. VISTAs are members. They are not employees, interns, nor volunteers of or with the sponsoring organization. VISTAs serve at the sponsoring organization. They don't work there. VISTAs receive a modest living allowance that aligns with the community they are serving. Let's look at a few important topics for your members and for those of us who support them. Members have questions on a variety of topics, and the topic of their questions often depends on how far into their service term they are. VISTA questions tend to fall under one of these categories: benefits, forms, end of service benefits, travel, and service letters. Members who are about to start service might have questions about the amount of their living allowance as well as how and when it's paid. Don't forget to fully explain member benefits and address some of these topics while interviewing those highly qualified candidates. For example, some benefits, such as living allowance, are available to all VISTA members. Other benefits, such as relocation assistance and child care, are only available to some VISTA members and require the VISTA member to take action in order to make use of the benefit. You'll want to be sure that all members carefully and correctly complete their W-4 and direct deposit information. Members should keep their direct deposit information updated, since they may change banks if they relocate for service, so they can see their living allowance and any approved travel or relocation or emergency reimbursements. And remember that sponsors are required to reimburse members for any service-related travel that is required of them. For example, if the VISTA assignment description, or VAD, outlines that the VISTA member will be traveling to community meetings and setting up partnerships, sponsors must reimburse members at the rate of your organization uses for reimbursement. In addition to the required onboarding forms, VISTA candidates are required to accept the terms and conditions of VISTA service before they can start. This is an online course they take on the VISTA campus. Eric will now walk us through a few more important topics for members.
As you recruit and select newer members, they may have questions about how to request forbearance on their educational loans, or how the cash stipend differs from the education award, or perhaps even how the education award can be used. Members later in their service might need more information about how non-competitive eligibility, or NCE, works, or when they'll be able to access their verification of service letter. Keep in mind, it is ultimately the VISTA member's responsibility to understand the details around these topics, including knowing where to find the benefits and details, which benefits may apply to them, and knowing what action they must take to utilize them. However, you as the VISTA sponsor and any direct supervisors will also want to know the details around them so that you can support your VISTA members and inform candidates during recruitment. On the screen and in the handouts panel, you have access to several links and great resources for these types of questions. First, the VISTA Campus Benefits Hub is the first place to go for information about member benefits. Second, you always have access to the VISTA Member Handbook and should take a look at that, as it has important information and guidance regarding these topics and more. Be sure to reference it as well as you keep in mind the VISTA Sponsor Handbook and the Resource Guide for links to more detailed guidance. And VISTA members specifically can also contact the VISTA Member Support Unit for benefits questions that may not be able to be answered on the VISTA campus. Before we continue, we'll pause a moment and see if there are any questions in the chat pod about what we've just covered. Are there any questions about any of our websites, CNCS, the VISTA campus, eGrants, any questions about the role of the CNCS state office, key member topics, or member benefits? If so, please type them in the chat panel now, and we'll answer 2 or 3 right now, and then we'll continue. I did see one question earlier that I believe I will answer based on information that's been presented, and there was a question as we, as CNCS state office and CNCS staff talk about the role of the CNCS state office, there was a question about will we be covering the role of the regional offices on this webinar. We will not, and that is not the purpose of this webinar. However, I will quickly say you should have, or at least some of your supervisors should have received an email from our CEO this past Monday with more details about the CNCS Transformation and Sustainability Plan. And simply there will be more information coming out in the future from your direct CNCS state office. But as our CEO outlined, the goal of the plan is to streamline efficiencies, provide a single point of contact at CNCS, reducing inconsistent information and duplication of effort, and also having more balanced workloads for our staff. So there will be more information about the role of the regional state offices, the phases of when they'll be implemented, and how that'll work coming forth in the very near future. I see another question from Norma. Are these various materials that we've mentioned in VISTA 101 and 201? So that's a great question. There are some resources and materials in those VISTA 101 and 201 courses. Depending on what materials you're looking for, when you're on the VISTA campus, if you hover over the supervisor section, that's where you'll find the supervisor handbook, supervisor manual. You'll find the resource guide and other resources specifically to supervisors in terms of recruitment, in terms of managing VISTAs, how to manage a VISTA project. You can also use the search field on the VISTA campus to find resources focused on supervisors or VISTA members as you try to recruit and train your VISTA members. So they're somewhat scattered out, but the campus is organized by members, leaders, and supervisors. So you can find it based on the topic you're looking for in the campus. And I don't see any other questions in the chat pod, so we will continue, but I will say as we go throughout the presentation, please keep the questions coming in the chat pod, and we will try to answer them at the end of the presentation, as well as at the end of the presentation, we will open it up for a Q&A. So now, we will take another look at our agenda to see what we've covered and what's coming up. So far today, we've looked at where to start as a new project sponsor, the origins of the VISTA program, and some of the very important details about the member positions. Next up, we'll take a look at some of the core responsibilities that sponsors have. As a VISTA sponsor, you have joined VISTA sponsors from across the nation in the mission of fighting poverty in your community. Your role is important to the success of the project, the members, and ultimately the impact of poverty in the community. Every VISTA project is accountable for the responsibilities we will outline, but each sponsor may assign these responsibilities as appropriate within the organization and the project. It is the sponsor's responsibility to ensure that all subsites are in compliance with VISTA policies and procedures. Let's take a look at member management. A successful VISTA project starts off with a strong and effective recruitment plan. At a minimum, this includes creating solid VISTA assignment descriptions, what we call VADs, that guide VISTA members in their service throughout the year. Drafting catchy and honest opportunity listings to announce your position and attract top quality candidates, as well as recruiting, screening, interviewing, and recommending the best candidate for service. And I'll quickly mention, as a sponsor, you'll see on the VISTA campus, under the Connect and Learn tab, there's a link that's labeled webinars. And we have several upcoming webinars, including one that will be posted very soon, specifically to the point I just mentioned about opportunity listings. So look for that email for April 2nd, a webinar on crafting compelling service opportunity listings, if you need assistance with that and more information. And you'll also want to make sure that you provide an in-depth on-site orientation and training to all incoming VISTA members at the beginning of their service to include the VISTA member orientation requirements, as well as fingerprint instructions and deadline. This OSAT should include opportunities for professional development and learning. Really strong VISTA sponsors do this well and find ways to integrate various aspects of the organization and the community with important things the VISTA members should know, as well as the interests and skills of the VISTA member.
Here are a few more important aspects of AmeriCorps VISTA member management. It's probably no surprise that the best projects offer day-to-day supervision and support of their members. This includes confirming that members have the space, supplies, and equipment necessary to carry out their service, providing reasonable accommodations to members who request them based on different abilities, and ensuring that members' activities are in line with their VADs. Even the best-run projects have member issues bubble up, so don't be disappointed if things get a little tricky. The most important thing to manage these members' issues, the most important thing is to manage member issues appropriately. That means addressing member issues as they arise, informing the CNCS State Office early of issues, documenting all discussions, tracking performance, keeping on top of the situation. And remember, Only CNCS may remove members from your project, and only CNCS may terminate members, so your documentation of member issues and discussing them with the CNCS state office is very important.
In terms of timekeeping, one best practice is to develop a system to track VISTA members' use of personal and sick leave, because it is your responsibility to monitor and manage the use of VISTA members' leave time. You can visit the VISTA member handbook for the rules regarding when it is permissible for VISTA members to use their leave. In addition to the 10 medical and 10 annual days that VISTA members are entitled to, VISTA members also receive most holidays observed by your organization, but seasonal breaks should be discussed with your CNCS state office. Looking at data management, you want to be sure to have your member track what they accomplish, not just for their own records, but for your records as well, because this will certainly help ensure that you have accurate information when it's time to report on performance measure targets. Consider creating a procedure manual or resource to keep track of steps that you or your VISTA members take to develop, and send out communications, update an online website or flyer, and more. These elements are part of sustainability as you and your VISTA members identify things that you can do to keep the project going well into the future. And don't forget, the VISTA Sponsor Resource Guide is a comprehensive list of resources to help you successfully manage your members. In addition to the topics mentioned earlier related to performance and member management, the following activities are allowed but must be approved in advance. With prior approval by the sponsor and the CNCS state office, AmeriCorps VISTA members are allowed teleservice, which involves serving at a location other than their project site for limited durations. They're allowed to hold outside employment, and they are allowed to attend educational courses. However, even though these activities are permissible, the VISTA member must request this through the project director and then have it approved through the CNCS state office.
The CNCS state office is always thinking about what's best for the project, and the CNCS office has the ability to deny requests that may interfere with the VISTA member's service or interfere with the project. To be safe, you should consult with your state CNCS office if any changes are made to that impact or will impact the project, subsites, or members. This could mean a change with project personnel and supervision of members, or it can mean that due to emerging community needs, a VAD must be tweaked to better support alleviating poverty in your community. Regardless, it's always a good idea to check with your CNCS state office, and the sooner they know about these shifts, the more support they will be able to give.
Now we're going to look at some of the restrictions on what can be done during VISTA service. Prior to starting service, VISTA members must complete the online Terms and Conditions course on the VISTA campus that details what's provided to and allowed by members during VISTA service. If a member violates one of the terms or conditions, you will need to contact your CNCS state office staff immediately. Different violations have different repercussions, and for the protection of the project and any of the members on board, it's critical to act promptly. For criminal activity, VISTAs and VISTA sponsors must report any criminal activity that occurs while in service to their CNCS state office. Religious activity, in engaging in religious instruction, conducting worship services, or engaging in any form of proselytizing during service time is prohibited. For political activity, engaging in partisan political activities while in service, such as engaging in fundraising for a partisan political campaign at any time, or advertising oneself as a VISTA while engaging in partisan political activity, are all prohibited. The Hatch Act is a federal law that was first enacted in 1939. VISTA members are considered federal employees for a few limited purposes, including the Hatch Act. The Hatch Act ensures that federal employees and VISTA members do not participate in political activity prohibited under the Hatch Act. Keep in mind that VISTA members also cannot be involved in voter registration as part of their VISTA service. They can do it if it's not part of VISTA service, though, and would just need to do it on their own time, not in VISTA gear, and not being identified as a VISTA member. In summary, VISTAs cannot engage in political activity, religious activity, lobbying, or union organizing as part of their service or while perceived to be a VISTA member. They can go to rallies or attend church services on their own non-VISTA time, but they cannot engage in either type of activity while serving or while identifying as a VISTA member. Also, whether during their service or on their own time, VISTAs are prohibited during their service terms from fundraising or soliciting money for a partisan political campaign. However, they may personally donate to a partisan political campaign.
Moving on to supplanting staff, members shall not perform duties that should be done or are typically done by paid staff or contractors. And with nepotism, we ask that you avoid the actual or appearance of favoritism in the operation of a VISTA placement. A VISTA member cannot be placed or assigned to a VISTA project site if the VISTA member is in the immediate family or a close relative of a project site staff member, or vice versa. Direct service. The role of VISTA is building capacity to bring communities out of poverty, and members do not perform direct service activities, except if needed during training, or doing so is merely incidental to performing their VAD, indirect service duties. For example, a member might design a school curriculum, but should not be the one regularly teaching children with the curriculum. Rather, they would recruit volunteers for that purpose. If you'd like more information or full description of prohibited activities, please visit Chapter 5 of the Member Handbook. Next, let's dive into core responsibilities for project management. It's important to note that all sponsors must follow the requirements and policies set forth in the Memorandum of Agreement. Your organization has entered into a legal agreement with CNCS. All projects must have an anti-poverty focus. All project activities from the application to the VISTA assignment description should tie back to alleviating poverty in your community. And if your project is already underway, you might be responsible for project continuation. Be sure to submit a continuation application 90 days before expiration of the Memorandum of Agreement. Let's take another moment for a quick check-in with everyone. Please take a minute to type your answer in the chat panel. What is your project start date?
Looks like people are starting to type in their answers, which is a good sign that people have a pretty good idea, which we hope you would by now, based on the information you've heard from and talked with from your CNCS state office. And I'll quickly add that it's a really good idea to know your start date. I see some of them are in June, some are in November of last year, and especially for those of you that are in kind of April, May, June, I'm sure you're probably in the phase of starting to plan and look at recruitment. So knowing your project start date is critical so you can back up and work forward.
Great, and thank you for that. I do see, as Eric does, a variety of start dates listed in the chat box. And as with our question about the name of your program officer earlier, depending on where you started with the VISTA project, you may not know your exact project start date, and that is okay.
If your VISTA project operates at more than one location or service site, you are required to have a memorandum of understanding with each of your sub-sites or multi-site sponsors, and you're required to encourage partnership development. Depending on your agreement with CNCS, you might also be responsible for activities related to cost share. If you have questions specifically about your agreement with CNCS, you can access the agreement in your eGrants account first, and if you can't find it, then you can consult your CNCS state office. Finally, it's a good idea to know that everyone is responsible for reporting in some way, so let's spend a little bit more time talking about reporting requirements.
Each VISTA project submits a set of reports to help CNCS review project progress. The information you provide in these reports demonstrates your project's impact, demonstrate resource management, and allow us to provide you better technical assistance. Next, Eric and I will walk through a variety of required reports. As we start, it's good to know that your state office will provide all deadlines for your reports, and you will be able to find instructions in the sponsor resource guide. Let's walk through the main forms required from VISTA sponsors. All projects are required to submit sponsor verification forms, VISTA project report supplements, VISTA project progress reports, and future plans forms. Only projects that have a program or support grant have to submit a federal financial report, or FFR. If you have questions about the type of grant you have with CNCS, access the agreement and e-grants or talk to your CNCS state office. Every 2 weeks, you will submit a sponsor verification form. This helps CNCS track which members are still actively serving at your project so we can prevent member overpayment. This information also ties in directly to VISTA member payroll for standard VISTA projects. Please be sure to set reminders for this report, and if you're going to be out of the office, determine who's going to submit the report on your behalf. This function must be completed by a staff member. Do not delegate it to an AmeriCorps member, an intern, or a volunteer. The Project Progress Report, or PPR. For the first year of your project, these are generally completed on a quarterly basis. The reports should build on each other. Check with your CNCS state office and in e-grants for more details on due dates, depending on your project year, because after your second year, progress reports are typically semi-annual. That transition is at the discretion of the CNCS state office. The progress report information will be part of your project's official record and will be used to evaluate a project's continuation. If you have questions about what you should include, I'll refer you to the PPR instructions in the VISTA Sponsor Resource Guide. If you are a project with multiple sites, you'll need to establish a way to aggregate information about members serving at those sites. Don't wait until your progress report is due to ask a question or to share a member's impact. We encourage you to share information with your CNCS state office as it happens. That way, our state offices can help share your successes and coach you through your challenges as they come.
The next report I will mention is the VISTA Progress Report Supplement, or VPRS. This is an annual report and tracks demographic information for your project. This report is typically due late in the calendar year and is based on our agency's fiscal year, October 1st of one year through September 30th of the next. This means that you will likely have to track information with your VISTA members on a monthly basis to accurately submit this report. You can find instructions on how to complete this report in the VISTA Sponsor Resource Guide. You must complete a Future Plans form, what we call an FPF, for every member at the end of their term of service. The member will complete the first part, Part A, then you will submit Part B, which evaluates the member's service. We strongly recommend you coordinate with the member's supervisor if you are not directly supervising this individual. The member then has the opportunity to review your comments. For that reason, we also recommend that you host an exit interview so that the member is aware of what you're going to enter for their review. Once those two sections are complete, it comes to the CNCS State Office for review. In terms of the FFR, the Federal Financial Report, for program and support grants, there is additional reporting requirements such as the FFR. Make sure that you connect with your CNCS state office for more information on what is required of your specific grant, and loop in the fiscal staff at your organization as appropriate. If you do not have a program or support grant, you don't need to worry about this. And if you have a cost share agreement, cost share invoices are payable upon receipt. You will receive them on a monthly basis through eGrants.
I'd like to share a few tips about these reports and forms. We recommend that you complete these forms as early as possible in the process. It can help you manage member recruitment and ties in directly to member and alumni benefits, specifically accessing the Education Award. For example, if a member wants to re-enroll or extend their service, then you should submit documentation of how they've successfully supported your project and accomplished activities on their VAD and rate them accordingly. This will help the CNCS state office evaluate you and their request and compare it to our budget. If a member needs to leave their service early or terminate their service, the CNCS state office can unlock the future plans form. However, the request to release this form should not be the CNCS state office's first notification that the member will be terminating their service. Please bring the CNCS state office into the conversation early so that we can help you troubleshoot any potential issues. I know this was a lot of information to absorb, so again, if you have questions, reach out to the CNCS state office. We are here to help. You've heard us talk about working with your CNCS state office quite a bit already. Another core responsibility is to share the good, the bad, and the ugly with your CNCS state office. By communicating openly, you position them to best support you. There are some things that the CNCS state office needs to hear about promptly rather than when your next progress report is submitted. Please be sure to alert your CNCS state office of major accomplishments and events such as new grant awards, visits from elected officials, and press coverage as they happen rather than waiting for the next progress report. Your CNCS state office will want to hear about and spread the word of your success. Also notify them promptly of major emergencies such as member hospitalization or arrest, a member going AWOL, member early terminations, etc., as well as any acute or chronic challenges with members, such as performance or conduct issues. Your CNCS state office is here to support you and needs to be up to date on your project status in order to do that effectively. Communicate with them about proposed changes to your project goals and member activities. For example, any changes to the VISTA assignment description, as well as shifts in staff, supervision, or organization status.
You will also want to share information about your VISTA project with your communities and your networks, especially because some of them may not have heard of AmeriCorps VISTA, or they'll be very, very excited to learn more about what VISTAs do. Be sure to acknowledge the resources that you receive by identifying AmeriCorps VISTA members, such as listing AmeriCorps VISTA as a funder of your organization in your materials, on your website, etc. Keep your communities and networks in the loop about your VISTA project to both spread the word on the capacity you're building, as well as to cultivate engagement and promote opportunities to serve with your organization. Now we're going to shift our attention to regulatory compliance. As a VISTA sponsor, it is your responsibility to comply with all regulations and requirements of the VISTA program. Your CNCS state office conducts monitoring and compliance activities throughout the life of your project. And since AmeriCorps VISTA is a federal program, and just like anything else supported by taxpayer funds, we need to ensure that the program is well run, doing what it's supposed to, and spending its money wisely.
CNCS state offices ensure compliance by conducting site visits and compliance monitoring visits. Site visits are generally conducted by CNCS state office staff, but occasionally headquarters personnel will attend too. Site visits may be informational in nature in order to provide technical assistance, or they might be for general project monitoring. Compliance monitoring visits are always scheduled in advance and are structured. They will probably include interviews with project staff, VISTA members, advisory council members, and community members or beneficiaries. They will include a review of documentation and procedures, and the letter outlining conclusions will be shared after. CNCS conducts these visits to make sure grantees are following the rules for AmeriCorps and grant management, and to provide support to VISTA sponsoring organizations. You will see that VISTA members also have a role when it comes to regulatory compliance. It is important to know that CNCS instructs VISTA members who feel they're being asked to do things that are not appropriate for their service to first talk about it with their supervisor. From there, they can talk with the CNCS state office. If the issue isn't resolved, or if they want to remain anonymous and they believe the matter relates to fraud, waste, or abuse, they can contact the CNCS Office of Inspector General. If a VISTA member believes they have been subject to illegal discrimination related to their VISTA service, they should immediately contact the CNCS Equal Opportunity Program, which will also be covered a little bit later. Remember to report concerns to your CNCS state office, and they are here to help develop, manage, and monitor VISTA projects, support you in managing your project and VISTA members, assist with member emergencies, challenging situations, and questions of policy, and support you by connecting you to resources. We talked about prohibited activities a bit earlier in our presentation. Now let's review a few important points. VISTA members should focus on what's outlined in the VISTA assignment description, which should directly tie to the overall project plan that was approved by CNCS. Your VISTA service should be to build capacity, not undertake activities that can be construed as direct service. If VISTA members are being asked to take over the work of staff, say someone who left the organization, that's replacing or supplanting staff, and that's not allowed. If a VISTA member is mostly doing administrative support for someone else, that's also not appropriate work for a VISTA member.
Looking at the agenda so far today, we've covered the big picture of national service and talked through some of the major elements of VISTA sponsor responsibilities. To ensure that you start off on the right foot, we will next share some member and project management keys to success. Here are some recommendations for strong AmeriCorps VISTA member management. By now, it should be no surprise that ongoing communication with your CNCS state office is critical. Make sure that they are aware of any challenges as well as accomplishments. Let's take a look at a few other items. For recruitment, be sure to start early and be proactive, factoring in possible obstacles and challenges. Take time to locate members that are a good fit, know the member benefits, and understand what it means to live on the living allowance. Invest time in drafting compelling opportunity listings to look at the right candidate. Be sure to offer professional development and support to your VISTA members. Develop a really well-articulated on-site orientation and training, because this is an essential step of setting up VISTAs for a successful year of service and working towards retaining your VISTA for their full 365-day term. In terms of ongoing support and supervision, we recommend that in supervising members, you address issues early on, track time and attendance, avoid direct service and other prohibited activities, and work with your CNCS state office if outside employment, teleservice, or direct service need to be approved in limited circumstances. If you happen to have a VISTA leader, understand the role of a VISTA leader, that they are not a supervisor, but you can utilize them to support your members. It's important to have regular meetings with your VISTAs, and also appreciate and recognize the work that the VISTA members do. Also, think very carefully about the close of service. You'll want to make sure that you help prepare members for their next steps once service is complete. In terms of the top tips for success related to project management, again, at the very top of the list is ongoing communication. We can't say it enough. It's a critical component to success of the VISTA program. Remember that you can reach out to them and your CNCS state office to tell them about the good and the bad before it gets ugly. And be sure to operate your VISTA projects in accordance with applicable laws, regulations, policies, certifications, and assurances, with best efforts to accomplish the goals set out for the AmeriCorps VISTA members in the project application, and in consultation with and involving the people of the communities to be served in planning, developing, and implementing the project. Like all federal agencies, CNCS has an Inspector General, whose office is responsible for preventing and detecting fraud, waste, and abuse. If you happen to encounter any issues with your project, address them at the sponsor level and, if necessary, with your CNCS state office. If the issues are not resolved, or if you want to remain anonymous, you can contact the Office of Inspector General. The Office of Inspector General takes all allegations seriously and conducts thorough investigations to ensure compliance with federal regulations and the terms of the VISTA program. VISTA members are protected by VISTA and CNCS from being subjected to discrimination or harassment. You, as a supervisor and a sponsor, also have an obligation to make sure that you do not subject anyone to discrimination or harassment. This applies to everyone you come into contact with, including VISTA members, clients, volunteers, and employees at your service site. CNCS's Equal Opportunity Office is responsible for and charged with reviewing and processing discrimination complaints filed by CNCS service members, including AmeriCorps VISTA members. And with that, I will hand it back to Zanguetta to cover important next steps.
We hope today's presentation has given you a good sense of the role of the VISTA sponsor and a sense of where to go to learn more. Let's review next steps as we start to wrap up today. Following this webinar, please notify your CNCS state office that you completed this session. Your CNCS state office will be able to answer your project-specific questions and can review next steps as you continue to learn about VISTA, your project, and your roles and responsibilities. If you are a sub-site supervisor, you will receive project-specific training from your project director. And as you prepare to manage a VISTA project, take time to review the resources that have been shared with you and become familiar with the VISTA campus. And finally, be sure to pursue other trainings as directed by your CNCS state office and VISTA.
So now that we're almost at the very end, we'd like you to please share your feedback on today's webinar. If you do not automatically see the evaluation appear on your computer, you can click the SurveyMonkey link that's in the SurveyMonkey pod and make sure that we capture your evaluation. We appreciate all the comments you have because it helps us to make webinars such as this and future webinars better and also solicit more information from you. Also, earlier we mentioned that today's webinar is being recorded. The recording will be posted on the VISTA campus in about 7 to 10 days from today. We know that this session contained a lot of information, and you may have questions, you may be thinking about questions, or you may not know what questions you have yet. But we would like to pause now as we're at the end of the presentation to take some time to answer a few of your questions. We may not be able to address everything, so you can definitely follow up directly with your CNCS State Office Program Officer after the webinar. While we do have a few minutes now, we know that there might be questions about anything that we talked about, whether it be VISTA member benefits or reports or roles and responsibilities. While you have a captive audience, Zanquetta and myself, please feel free to type your questions in the chat and we'll get to them in just a second. I'm also going to ask our wonderful operators at LSI to provide verbal instructions as to how people who called in by the phone can ask a question over the phone.
Thanks, Eric. If you dialed into the webinar or had Adobe Connect call you back, you can ask questions using your phone. To ask questions over the phone line, press *# and you'll be placed into the queue. When it is your turn to ask a question, you will hear the prompt, "Go ahead, caller." Then you may proceed with your questions. Once again, to ask questions over the phone lines, press *# to be placed in the queue. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And while we check to see if there's any queue calls coming in over the phone, I see there's a couple of questions coming in the chat, so keep them coming. And I'll go ahead and answer this question. There's a question from Lynn about, we talked about the future plans form, which is something that when a VISTA member is exiting their service, the VISTA member completes Part A, and then it goes to the supervisor to complete Part B. So first, I'll quickly mention something, and then I'll answer the question. So I did forget to mention, in terms of the future plans form, usually the future plans form is automatically unlocked for the VISTA member to complete approximately 90 days before they're scheduled to end service, because it asks for simple things like is the member expecting to complete service as scheduled? Does the member think that they're going to end their service early? And there's a few other questions it asks. But the member does complete Part A in their my.americorps.gov account. Once they complete it and submit it, it goes then to their supervisor or sponsor, and you would see it in eGrants. There's as you know, when you log into your eGrants account, there should be a link at the bottom right corner that says Portal Home. That's the link that kind of connects you to your version of the my.americorps.gov account. And on that page, you'll see a huge list of links on the left side. You'll have access to the future plans form that a member submitted on that Portal Home page, and you would fill out Part B and then submit that. So that was a great question. Thank you for the follow-up. So Zengueta, I'm going to ask this next question, and I might start answering the question, and you can add comments if you have any as well, because it's about the state offices. So it's a follow-up question in relation to the earlier question. The question is, how will the change in state offices closing affect local grantees later in the year? So David, it's a good question. Earlier in the webinar, we mentioned briefly that as part of the CNCS Transformation and Sustainability Plan, our CEO, Barbara Stewart, sent out an email, I believe this past Monday, with some more information. It didn't have every single detail because some of that is being worked out now, but the general answer is, the general response, it explained why the transformation is occurring, streamlining efficiencies, improving productivity, but also it included information that as we get more information, there will be specific details sent out, not just from CNCS headquarters and our CEO's office, but your specific CNCS program officer and CNCS state office will be providing more specific detail about if there's anything else that you need to know that's different and how that'll work. Zengueta, I don't want to skip anything. Did I miss anything, or do you have anything else to add to that?
I don't think you missed anything. The only thing I would add, Eric, is as far as impact on local projects, we are ever mindful that these changes are not happening in a vacuum, and our service to local projects and grantees should continue as seamlessly as possible. So right now, each project sponsor is assigned a state program officer and a grants officer. As state offices start to close and we move various states into the regional structure, each project will have what will be called a portfolio manager, which is a single point of contact within CNCS. So there should not be any time during the transition from the current state office structure to the new regional office structure when each program will not be aware of who their dedicated point of contact is within CNCS.
And lastly, I'll add to what Zengueta said. Obviously, as changes come, you'll be connected with whoever your new point of contact is if you have a new point of contact. But of course, the important thing, as we both said, is don't stop your work. Continue to recruit, continue to lead successful VISTA programs, and of course, continue to reach out to your CNCS program officer now if you have questions either about the sustainability plan or especially specifically about the VISTA program. I do see a couple more questions coming in the chat, but I'm first going to turn to our LSI team. It sounds like we have a caller on the phone.
Yes, Eric. We have a caller ready with a question. Go ahead, caller.
Hi, this is Terrell Gill. How are you guys?
Wonderful, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. I'm great. I just had a question. I actually typed it in, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway. But my question is related to reports and exit interviews. I remember you guys covered that not long ago. Are there specifics to include in the report, that are required and important? And is there room for creativity? Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit for me?
Great question. Let me first say one thing, then I'll pass it off to Zanguetta because she probably has more specifics in her role. But don't forget to everyone that we have a couple of different reports for different reasons. So there's the project progress report, or PPR, and then that's typically due either quarterly or semi-annually. And then separately we have the VPRS, the VISTA Project Report Supplement, that's only due every year. So Zanguetta, I'll quickly turn it over to you to talk about, let's first talk about the PPR, the Project Progress Report, if there's anything specifically that sponsors need to know to include in that report or best practices.
Sure. So with the two reports that Eric just mentioned, the Project Progress Reports and the VISTA annual reports, these are pretty structured reports. There are certain narrative questions and certain data points that all projects are required to answer, and there is not room for a great deal of creativity in answering the questions on those reports. The questions that we ask are very standard questions. A lot of it is based on what you wrote in your application narratives and your performance measures. So just asking questions about how well you are progressing toward your goals that were outlined in the project application. One area that is not a formal report, but that all state offices engage in some way, is a collection of weekly or monthly program highlights. And these are the opportunities where we ask projects to share their stories of success with us. And so these are reports where you do have the opportunity to be very creative and providing information that is not just filling in the blank on a prescribed reporting form, but to tell us the stories that you want to share with us in the way that you want to share with us. So Terrell, I think that answers your question, but please let me know if it doesn't or if anything was not clear.
Yeah, it absolutely answered my question, and that's why I wanted to ask, because, I've done reports in the past where it is pretty, brick and mortar structured, but like you said, you guys create an opportunity where you, like you said, you allow for a spotlight, and I can, tell the story and pretty much be as creative as I would like, and, that's what I wanted to know, from you guys.
Great, thank you.
Terrell, the one thing I'll add, I did just type it in the chat, but just for everyone's edification, it's a very important note. You may already realize this, but eGrants is, I know it's everyone's favorite website, so we hope you put a star next to that. But I just wanted to quickly mention when it comes to reports, any kind of reports, especially ones you have to put in eGrants, a couple of really quick things to remember. One, most of them do have character limits, so you certainly can be creative as you mentioned, but realize if you want to type a dissertation, it probably won't fit in those specific boxes. Number two, a best practice is we strongly encourage you to write the answers to your reports in Microsoft Word and save them to your computer. One, so that you have a copy and have it for your records permanently. But two, because eGrants does have a tendency for security reasons to time and log you out after, I think it's 15 or 20 minutes of inactivity. So that way you can just copy it from Microsoft Word, you don't lose the information, and then if it is over the character limit, you can tweak it that way. And then finally, I'll add eGrants, because of the way the system is built, and yes, I know all of you are wondering when is it going to be revamped. Hopefully one day soon, but we don't have an exact date on that. But I do want to mention eGrants, the system is basically plain text only, so you cannot add fancy fonts or images in eGrants. It's really only text. But some of the information, especially if you develop really cool things or the vistas have news clippings or pictures they want to share, if that's not able to be uploaded in eGrants, which it's not, they can forward that specifically to the state office so that they still have a copy of that. The report would be in eGrants, but all the supplemental information would be sent via email. And there was a question earlier from Norma, as I try to scroll up and find it. We talked a lot about e-grants. And the question is it possible for us to review how often or when a project sponsor should review the e-grants website? Then, Greta, do you have any insight in terms of, it may not necessarily be every single day, but from your perspective as a state office, is there a recommended time frame, let's say an amount of times per week that a project sponsor or VISTA sponsor should be going into e-grants?
Sure. So the answer to that really is going to vary a lot based on what time of the year it is in terms of your project. So during times that you are bringing on members, I'll back up a little bit. There are many functions that we utilize e-grants for, including member management, grants management, and reporting. And so with member management, as you are recruiting members, the AmeriCorps portal that we talked about earlier is a function of the e-grant system. So during recruitment, you would very likely be using that system at least daily, probably multiple times per day. There are some member management functions that happen in e-grants. Your sponsor verification is a report that, as Eric mentioned, you'll be doing every other week, and that is a report that's completed in e-grants. The progress reports that we talked about are also submitted in e-grants for those who have federal financial reports that will be due because they have a project, a program, or a support grant. The financial reports are done in e-grants. So it is something that will vary quite a bit from project to project, and there are times of the year when projects are in e-grants all the time on a daily basis, and then there may be a couple weeks where a project doesn't have any real reason to be in e-grants at all.
Great answer. And I forgot to mention quickly that e-grants also works best in Internet Explorer, even though we know people like to use Chrome and Firefox and all sorts of other browsers. Just beware, you're probably going to get the best performance using Internet Explorer. I'll wait just another few seconds to see if any questions come in via the chat, and while I wait for a few seconds, I'll mention, even though we know the VISTA program has requirements and responsibilities, and you have roles and things you have to do, obviously you want to make sure that you have fun with it. Work has work involved, of course, but enjoy what you're doing, especially the more you enjoy what you do, the more the VISTA will see that you're excited to have them on board, the more they'll get excited about the project, and hopefully the more your community will see the impact that you and the VISTAs are making. We're really excited to have you as VISTA sponsors and know that any resources that we can provide you from headquarters or from the CNCS state office level, we're happy to do so. Since I do not see any questions, I don't want to belabor the point. We'll continue to the last two slides. We know we've covered a lot of ground today, and our discussion hopefully has given you a really good starting point as you jump into your new role as VISTA sponsor and supervisor. Remember again that if you have any questions as you continue to do this great work with the AmeriCorps VISTA program, your first and best point of contact is the VISTA campus for more resources and information, and your CNCS State Program Officer for additional questions. Finally, sincere thank you to my co-presenter, Zanguetta, for the great job she did not just on this webinar, but as a State Program Director and all the stuff she does with CNCS. To my supervisor, Barbara Reynolds, and other CNCS staff for their great work on this webinar and helping to put together materials. To our partners at LSI for managing the Adobe Connect technology. But of course, we especially want to thank you for joining us today, because your work makes a huge difference to the VISTA program, to your VISTA members, and the leaders, as well as to your community. So thank you, thank you, thank you. This concludes our session. Have a wonderful day, and seriously, thank you so much for being part of the VISTA program. Thank you, and have a